So much of what we focus on when it comes to talking about fertility challenges is centered around women. Everything we have to go through and how much our life changes and how hard this struggle is. But what is it like for the partner who's going through it too? How hard must it be to watch someone you love go through everything that's involved with infertility? And how do they cope with this? On today's episode, we hear from one incredible man who is making it easier for men to share what they are going through too. Welcome to Your Journey to Fertility. This is the podcast that blends both science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Here each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so you can stop stressing that you'll never have a baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much and welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate you pressing play today and spending your time with me. And this episode is slightly different to ones I normally do. I look back on the podcast. We're up to episode 74 now. Can you believe it? 74. And I haven't interviewed a man before. So I thought it was about time. And I was doing some work with David, our guest today from Fertility for Men recently. He asked me to come and do a talk with his membership group about yoga for male fertility. And it just got me thinking, it's just not something that we think about a lot. And, to be fair, it really is all about the woman when you are trying to conceive. It really is. We go through so much. But our partners do have to be there along the way if we have a partner. And we don't often consider what they are going through as well. So I really wanted to get David onto the podcast and just hear his perspective and talk to someone from, a different side of things. So I think about what my husband went through when we were trying to conceive, and God, to watch your partner go through fertility treatments and loss. And, one thing Roger always said to me was how helpless he felt. And God, it makes me emotional just thinking about it now, because that so much of it is outside of your control, and you would do anything for that person that you love. But, in that position, there's literally not much that you can do. So I feel like no one is asking men how they're dealing with this journey because it is a lot for them. So today's guest is David Ireland, he runs Fertility for Men. It's a supportive community where men can go to meet others dealing with fertility challenges, find out ways to physically support their fertility, and emotionally and mentally as well. Actually talk to a bunch of guys who get it, which is something I find women are quite good at, but men, not so much. So I hope you enjoy hearing David's perspective on this journey, and maybe this is one you'll want to listen to with your partner as well. David, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. You are the first man that I think I've interviewed for this podcast, and it's just so nice to be able to find a man who is able to express themselves so openly on this journey. The work that you do is incredible, and I can't wait to learn all about it. So just wanted to say a big thank you before we start. Can we learn a little bit more about you and the work that you do?
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jennifer. Thanks so much for having me join you today as well. So absolutely. I've actually set up a business called Fertility for Men, and that's actually about raising awareness for men on their fertility. And the reason I did that is because I've gone through fertility challenges myself over the years, and I never really had, anybody to talk to about it, to be honest. I think as a man, we generally have egos and we don't generally want to express ourselves. So it's a good platform for men to come and share their journeys. It's also about, I mentioned spreading that awareness to men all over the world. And I've spoken to some couples and individuals who are struggling on their fertility journey, and I'm happy to help through my own experiences as well, which has been quite rewarding.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you mind sharing how you came to doing this kind of work? If you want to share your journey in as much or as little detail as you'd like.
I think the journey for me was really about, me and my wife went through fertility, albeit I think 8 years ago now. We tried to conceive for a kid, and we're super, super fit and healthy. And it was really bizarre actually, because we tried for a while and nothing was happening, and then we kind of went to get some tests done, and everything I felt was pretty normal, pretty okay, until I was told I had something called oligospermia, which is basically I had a low sperm count, but I didn't really think too much about that, to be honest. So I just thought, okay, well, I have a low sperm count, but what does that generally mean? And then we went into what the numbers looked like, and I think it was sitting around 12 million. And I thought, well, it only takes one sperm to to fertilize an egg, so that's not a big deal, surely. And it's kind of weird actually, because I think the journey for us has been somewhat confusing over the years, in a sense of we've seen so many different consultants over the years, and we've had somewhat conflicting messages from different doctors. So I always found that quite interesting, kind of reflecting back over the years in terms of how it hasn't worked for me and my wife, to be honest.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's so frustrating, isn't it? You look at these numbers when test results come back and you think, what is it, 40 million as a semen analysis count is like the average. You think, how does it take 40 million sperm in order just to get one good one? It's crazy.
It is crazy. I think I got told I had like 12 million or something. And I thought, well, out of 12 million, one should be okay. But, maybe that's not always the case.
You would think so, wouldn't you? Oh my goodness.
You would.
So when you were first faced with these challenges, and I think we always assume, well, I have found that people generally assume that infertility is definitely more of a female thing. And when we look at all of the research and the stats that are around, we know that male fertility contributes to at least 40%, it's either a combined or it's a male factor on its own. So it's quite shocking when we see all of these stats, and we have no idea. We're always told growing up that as soon as we have sex without protection, we're going to fall pregnant, and that's just not the way it works for so many of us. What do you feel like your reaction was to this news and to your journey probably not looking as easy as you wanted it to be, compared to your wife's? How did you handle it compared to how she handled it?
It's a really good question, actually. I think it was really just a little shocked. So I think we were both shocked and confused, I think, at first. We're quite healthy. We took care of ourselves. We went to the gym quite often. And I think we were unaware of there ever being an issue because the way we were. And the confusing part was why, when we thought about other people who have got kids and, they've had kids successfully, why us? Our friends around us were having kids as well. So it didn't really make any sense. And I think that really confused the hell out of us to why it just couldn't happen. And I think when you're confused about the whole thing, it kind of sends you into a different path mentally, I think, as well, because you just don't know what to expect. Well, if it's not going to happen for us, then if and when, and I think that was just a bit strange, I think.
Definitely. And did you feel that your wife had people to lean on? Was it easy for her to go and get support in this situation?
To be honest, no. I think my wife particularly didn't really have anybody to speak to at that time. I think when I think about the beginning, she obviously had her friends who she could talk to, and I think some of them were quite supportive. I think others were, don't stress about it. It will just happen. And I think that's really hard, is because I think unless you've gone through it yourself, you don't actually really know how challenging it is. And I think that was the hardest part for her, in particular, is not knowing who to go to. Or both of us, we didn't know who to go to. And I think it is the hardest thing, because what can you do? It felt quite lonely at times because we only had each other to support, which is great. But when you don't have anybody to turn to, then you just feel quite isolated, I think. And isolation can be quite challenging.
It is such a lonely journey, honestly. That is one of the biggest words I would use to describe the whole process. Did you open up about your journey to your friends or to your family at all?
Yeah, we did actually. We opened up to our friends, and we shared with them how challenging it is for us. Some of our friends said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You're still young. Go on holiday. Don't be so stressed." The typical, go on holiday, don't be stressed about these things. These things they'll just happen naturally. But
Mm.
that wasn't the case for us. I think some friends were quite supportive of us. Some were a bit naive, I think, as well. And I think that's really challenging when you've got a group of friends who you can confide in, but just brush it off because they don't understand the challenges that you're both facing, to be honest. And it didn't help us, I think.
I found that as well, and it's so interesting, isn't it? I think if, you were raised with someone that you had a health issue, if you're diagnosed with something, some kind of health issue, I feel like people are quite empathetic and we have sort of a general level of understanding around common health issues. But there's something about fertility where people are just clueless. And it amazes me to this day that people just have no idea what to say in a situation like that. It is so, so frustrating at all. And did you speak to find all friends were equally as clueless, or were you getting similar responses from female and male friends?
I think similar responses. I think for the men particularly, I don't think they were too concerned or too clued up about it, to be honest, because I think at that point in time, it felt like men wasn't the issue for fertility at all. It was all down to the women. And that's the misconception, I think, that many men have even today is we don't have an issue. The woman carries the baby, therefore she's the one that has to deal with it all. And I think that's a big danger, to just assume anything and to assume that everything's down to your wife and not us personally. So I think the experience from that point of view was quite challenging. And again, that comes back to, I guess, men having egos and not admitting that potentially they may have a fertility factor. Whereas I think some of the women who my wife and I spoke to could sympathise a bit more, particularly if they had gone through it. But the ones that didn't were, I guess, somewhat sympathetic to some degree, but equally kind of reacted quite differently, I think, to our male friends. And that's probably because I guess women can connect more with fertility. Women carry babies, and I think there's more of that emotional connection and awareness. And I think part of that is men not being aware or realizing that they make up half of the DNA, and that's what produces the baby. And I think there's a big gap in terms of knowledge between men and women, to be honest.
It literally is 50%, and it's it just blows my mind that we tend to forget that somehow along the way. I find that, all of the students that I've worked with over the years, these challenges either bring you closer together or they end up tearing you apart. And I'm sure that all of us go through moments of both of those. How did you find it affected your relationship?
I think it was quite challenging in the sense of it was emotionally challenging. I think how it affected us. I think it affected us because we didn't know whether we were going to be parents because we had planned on being a family. I think it also affected us because it was about sharing in that moment. For myself personally, I think being honest about it, I think being a man, we tend to bottle things up. And I think most men do actually bottle things up. So I think that sharing piece is really key. So I was able to express myself to my wife, and I think that's what makes us stronger as a unit, is by opening up. We took holidays together. We focused more on our health, and I think it really helps us more as a couple to be stronger. I think we learn to be focused and learn what's in our control and what's out of our control. And I think that's the most important thing when you're going a fertility journey and you need to support your wife throughout this journey. It's not just her, it's her and you in it together. And I think that's the most important takeaway.
Hmm. How did you feel watching your wife go through treatments? I mean, I've been through treatments myself and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. I can't imagine what it's like to watch someone go through all of that. Can you share your experiences and how you felt?
Yeah, do you know what? Watching, just thinking about it now, actually, I never forget the first time where we went to the clinic and they said, "Okay, we need to take your wife away, and we're going to be doing a collection." And I actually broke down, like I just literally broke down, and that kind of scarred me, I think. because it was out of our control. I couldn't do anything to help my wife. I was just, I was just sitting there completely useless, I think, knowing that she had to go through all the injections daily. It was just an emotional roller coaster. I think it was, well, to be honest, I think it was quite brutal. I think watching your wife or partner having to go through injecting yourself every day, if you've got to do it within a certain time frame as well, I think that's really tough on them, physically and emotionally. I think we've got the emotional burden, which we don't always express ourselves, but women definitely have the physical and emotional, and they have to continue. They still go to work, have to put on a smiley face, and I don't know how you women do that and cope with that. It's an emotional weight, which is heavy for both couples, I think, going through that. And I still think about that first egg collection my wife went through, and that completely devastates me. But you need to be strong for each other during that time, and I think that's what makes you close as a couple.
It was the moments where my husband broke down that I would just absolutely lose it as well. You think it's okay, one of us is being strong, one of us is being strong. But as soon as he lost it, I was just, yeah, gosh, it is so much to go through, isn't it? Did you find that there were moments where your wife wanted to do all of the things to support her fertility? And I see this a lot. Women get very involved with, I've got to take all the supplements. I've got to go to acupuncture. I've got to eat perfectly. I've got to make sure I get 8 hours sleep. And they go through this regimen of let's be perfect. Did you notice your wife getting into that kind of mode?
I think so. I think when we, thinking about my wife at that time and thinking about getting herself prepared, body prepared, thinking about all the supplements that she can take to help her, but also equally help me. And I think part of that is really about working together. So if my wife had to do something, then I felt I needed to do the same. So my wife said, she's going to stop drinking. Well, then I'd stop drinking. Or we don't smoke, so that was never an issue anyway. But if we're not going to eat processed foods, I'm not going to eat processed foods. I think that's really important because you then generally work as a couple, thinking about the supplements, thinking about the diet, how important they both play in terms of your improving your health overall. And I think that men need to be very equally involved in that process. It shouldn't just be about women supporting her fertility. You need to be doing the same, if not more, than what your wife's doing. And I think giving that support to your wife during taking the right supplements, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, you're really working together on that. So my wife said to me, stop eating that biscuit, or it's not going to help. Fine, then I won't eat that biscuit. Put down that glass of red wine, and I think that really helped us through that moment because I became more aware myself, as and I think that really helped in terms of that support for her, because seeing her having go through egg collection more than once, I'd have to admit, and I think seeing the repercussions of that is really important to kind of hone into. Really, really don't take your health for granted. Really look after your health. If you need to take supplements because you're low in something, absolutely take it. Supplements, diet, lifestyle, they play a huge, huge part in that. So I think that's where you need to step up as a man and support your wife as much as possible while she's going through taking supplements.
I think you might be one of the good ones, David, because I see a lot of the time, women will be doing all the things and then they struggle with getting their partners on board as well. So what would you say to women who are struggling to really, get their partner or their husband to do the same things in terms of looking after their health and their lifestyle if they're just not on the same page? How can we address that?
I think from women's point of view, I think maybe we understand that men sometimes maybe, process things a little bit differently. We've got a short attention span. So, we might not necessarily express our emotions the same way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not feeling anything. I think some men can open up a lot more than others. I think you need to encourage, or they need to encourage the man as much as the man needs to encourage the woman. So rather than saying things like, you shouldn't be taking, you should be doing this, maybe try, well, why don't you try a Q10 supplement because it helps with something. So I think rather than telling, kind of working together with your male partner, I think that's going to be really important. I think you also need to acknowledge that it's both hard it's hard for both of you, and just being really open and honest about that. I think you need to support each other as of so because you're both going through it together. So you've got your physical challenges from the woman, but then you've also got the emotional challenges for both of you as well. And I think that's really important. I think you need to find ways to reconnect with each other, and then maybe things like going on dates, going on vacation somewhere. Try not to think about conceiving too much, just go and have fun with each other. And I think that's the biggest part of when you're going through fertility. There's so much focus around baby, 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 I need a baby. And I think if you just kind of enjoy your life more a little bit and remove that stress from your life, it can potentially help. I'm not saying it's going to help you get a baby, but I think it'll really help mentally, and I think it'll put you in a different space altogether.
Absolutely. We forget that the only reason we want to have this baby is because we have the relationship to support it, or we do kind of put that on the back burner a bit, don't we? We think, well, the relationship will be fine. We just have to get to the baby. But gosh, I'm sure so many people can relate to, getting to moments where you think, all right, this relationship isn't in a place where I want it to be, and this is really taking a toll on our relationship. So what kind of things did you and your wife do to kind of keep that, I don't want to say the term keep the romance alive, because let's be honest, it's a hard slog. But how did you keep that connection going?
I think we learned to communicate better with each other. I think that was really key. I think being open and honest with each other as well. If there's any doubt in terms of feeling isolated or feeling overwhelmed, that's when we needed to support each other and stand up and speak up for each other. And I think that's the best part about having your wife or your partner with you, is being able to freely express how you're feeling going through this journey together. And I think that's the best support. My advice would be to do that more often. Get away as often as you can, because I think that will, you'll learn to switch off. We focus a lot on work, which is great, but do things that, can really help resonate with your mind, whether it's doing some yoga, whether it's doing some meditation, going on retreat somewhere. All these things will really kind of help both of you on your journey together, and I think help support you through difficult and challenging times.
Can I ask you more about your organization that you run? So obviously men come to you, do they find you usually of their own accord, or are they kind of pointed in your direction from their female partners?
It's a good question. So I think more from females, partners kind of giving them the nudge. And that's probably because men are still a little bit embarrassed to reach out. And I think the awareness piece is quite key, because they still don't think that they have an issue or want to admit that they've got an issue. And I think that's a real danger, because then there's so much more pressure put on women, and more pressure put on women to spend unnecessary amount of time, money, resources, having to go through IVF when potentially there's no need for them to go through IVF. So I think there's a big learning curve there in terms of making sure that your man is really on the same journey and the same wavelength as you. Because if they're not, I'd question that, and I'd be open about questioning that, because it's really important that you get the support from them before you even consider going through IVF or any type of fertility treatment, because sometimes it's not necessary if the issue's down to the man. Why would you want to put your wife through unnecessary treatment for no reason? And that I find quite bizarre that happens.
It does happen. So what kind of support do you offer the men that come to see you? How does it kind of work?
Fertility for Men is a knowledge platform where I share latest research. I'm also creating something quite unique for men at the moment, which is a program for men, which I'm launching very soon. And it really kind of touches on key points in terms of what men can do to improve their fertility, because men don't have anyone to go to and talk to. So it's something I think will really help, one, spread awareness to men and help them on their fertility journey, which will then obviously help put them in the right place to be a father. Because you go through fertility as a couple, and you're in that journey together because you want the same outcome for each other, and that's to be parents. So I think if we can give that to men, or give the opportunity to men to kind of look after their fertility in the first place, before going through spending thousands and thousands of dollars on unnecessary IVF, then I think that's a real big starting point, I think. And I think it's very much needed.
Do you find that men will open up to you about how they're feeling and about the emotional toll of the journey as well?
I think they've started to. I think men will start and have started to open up. And I think that's quite important, that more men become familiar with fertility, or male infertility, more specific. Not many people talk about it. Some are talking about it more now, which I think is really good. So I think the awareness is starting to become more apparent, which I think is a really good starting point, because I think there's so much that hasn't been done around male infertility. The focus has always been on the women, and it has done for many years. There's an issue with fertility. Great, let's just go straight to the woman and let's get her tested because she carries the baby. But that's not the case. And, we both know 50% is down to men, as well as, and the other 50% is down to a woman. So you can't have all the emphasis just on the women. I always think of it as there's an analogy I kind of think about having, you've got your egg, which is the engine, and then you've got the sperm, which is the fuel, let's say. But if that fuel is not the best fuel going into the engine, then it's not going to work. So I always think that if you can fix the fuel first before it goes into the engine, and then your success chances are probably a lot better than what they could be. And I think, Fertility for Men is really kind of encouraging that. I'm also launching a 5-day course soon, challenge, Fertility Challenge for Men, which will hopefully inspire them to take some steps, basic steps, because it's the basic steps that we need to improve fertility. And I think the more we start raising awareness on male fertility, the better I think our wives will feel, our partners will feel, and overall it improves our health generally, which I think is a wonderful thing.
David, where can people learn more about Fertility for Men, and how can they get involved with what you offer?
People can go and find me on my Instagram. My website's being launched soon, where I'll be sharing more information. I've actually been interviewing experts around the world around fertility, particularly in their field. So I've been reaching out to urologists, because it's really good to understand how they see male infertility and what they can do to help men on their journey. And I think all the resources, interviewing experts will kind of really help give the message to men that, you're not alone, there's support for you. And I think is very much needed today.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thank you. And I will link up your IG account in the show notes here as well. David, thank you so much for sharing your time and just coming on. And, it's so lovely to hear about this journey from, another perspective. So I really appreciate. I hope you found this episode today helpful. And if it's something you think your partner would benefit from, share it with them, or, send them over to David's Instagram, where they can learn so much more about connecting with other guys who are on this journey as well. And I will link up David's Instagram in the show notes here as well. Now, on the next episode of the podcast, I am going to be going through all the things that I wish I had known before I went through infertility. And these are some of the things that were so surprising, so unexpected. And I think that you're going to be able to resonate with quite a few of them. So until then, I hope to see you back next week. But in the meantime, I'm sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice. after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.